morning, folks. Thanks, Andrew. It's the sign of the times for sure when everyone is so used to Zoom calls that the housekeeping notes are somewhat irrelevant because everyone has turned off their camera and muted themselves. So well done, folks. Good job. Good morning. And welcome to Wednesday's series of sessions. And there's the One Industry support and readiness sessions. And this topic is getting to know who's coming in 2021. The 5 things to know about resident travelers. So my name is Stan Cook. I know many of you on the call, and some of you I haven't met in person, but have met virtually. So we basically came up with these series of sessions, and Monday's sessions we did, of course. Today we're repeating the exact same 3. It was great response to Monday's session, so we're very excited about how today is going to go. We're going to start off with Michaela Robathan, who is Director of Research for the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, and Recreation. She's going to break down the 2020 data that she has into usable, bite-sized pieces, and it's all about helping us get to know who's going to be coming to our province in 2021. So Michaela is going to take us through that for about 40 minutes or so. Then we're going to jump on with John Devereaux, who owns the Edge of the Avalon Inn, and Joe O'Brien of O'Brien's Boat Tours, and they're going to talk about what they did last year to prepare successfully as they could possibly, dealing with the resident market and what we're left with and what they're going to do for 2021. So we'll have some time to hear their stories and then have some time for question and answer if you want to add some questions for Michaela or questions for the 2 lads. So to let you know, Michaela will talk more about this, but everything that's presented today will be recorded, and Michaela's information that she has, and it's very valuable and insightful, she is going to send that to me, and I'll make that available to anyone who wants to see it in a more usable form, and as you see it as she presents. So that'll be something that'll be done later on the week. So if you want to reach back out to H&L, and we'll make sure you get that. So as we're continuing right now, we're going to have these 3 speakers, and if you can keep yourself on mute and your camera off, that works the best for our platform. At the end, when we get to the question and answers, we'll allow everyone to pop themselves off mute and to ask the questions if they're interested. So as I said, this will be recorded and will be put on our HL YouTube channel. So we will have a chance to see it in the future and go over it and stop and pause and see and listen to this again for the second time if you want. So we're going to get going right into it. And what I'm going to do is have the Director of Research for the department, Michaela Robathan, jump on the screen and take over the mic. And for the next little while, the floor is yours, Michaela.
Thank you, Stan, for the introduction, and thank you to H&L for inviting me to present at this session today. It's always a pleasure to connect directly with our tourism operators, and always nice to have a chance to do this. So as Stan already mentioned, today we want to talk a little bit about what we can do to prepare for the upcoming tourism season, and we will delve a little bit more into our recent survey data to learn more about what our resident travelers did last summer and what opportunities we have to build on last year's momentum. You see the agenda here on the slide. It's a short one, but still we have lots to talk about. So we'll start off with talking a little bit about travel demand, what it looks like there, some detail about our resident travelers from last year, and what opportunities we can build on from that. And at the end, I also want to talk a little bit about building traveler confidence and why it is important to deliver value. So now, I'm sorry. And also, as Stan mentioned, what you see on the screen here, we will deliver to you as a report. So you have no worries. Whatever you see, you don't have to take screenshots or anything. The report will be in your hands probably by this afternoon or latest tomorrow. So let's get started. So we've heard a lot of talk about pent-up demand, pent-up travel demand. And indeed, when we look at all the travel-related surveys, there are a lot of signs that pent-up travel demand really exists. And So one interesting term that has crept up actually over the last few months is revenge spending. I'm sure some of you have come across it in the news or in some of the newspapers. It's been talked about a lot in terms of in the context of retail as well as in travel. And I'm not sure if it will really happen. It will happen for some, but we'll see whether it's going to be a mass occurrence and people go out and start spending as soon as they're allowed to go places. Now, when it comes to our own residents, there is definitely demand building, and the province could indeed benefit from increased in-province travel. So one of the interesting results we have seen in some Destination Canada research was that when we look at the different provinces and where residents are inclined to go, Newfoundland Labrador was the only province where there was a higher share of residents who are likely to travel in province rather than out of province. So that bodes well for what is coming up this season. And also, depending on what the pandemic situation will look like in a month or two, it is very likely that residents will travel in the home province rather than venturing outside the province or even outside the country. And uh, as well, residents planning to spend more of their vacation time traveling in the province, things are certainly looking optimistic for this season. And as we're looking at the case numbers in the province, um, they're certainly going in the right direction. So, and looking at the combination with the research, I'm very optimistic for this season. So, through our travel research, we have learned a lot about the past year about our residents and how they traveled, and we learned something about their behavior, what they did, what destinations they went to, and so this was the first season. It might not be the last, but it was the first season under very difficult pandemic conditions. So we don't know what travel will look like in a few months, but there's certainly some takeaways from what happened last summer, and it will certainly help prepare us for this summer. So let's take a look at those five things that I want to talk about today. Of course, there's more things that we can learn about our travelers, but we have barely time to talk about five, so we'll pick those. And so, what our research showed from last year was that um, residents of all ages and from all regions traveled throughout the province. However, residents did tend to stay close to home, and they traveled either in their own region or in a very close neighboring region. So those travel patterns were likely impacted by the pandemic. We know when we think back about last year, there was a lot of uncertainty around the virus. Things could change in a moment. So staying close to home was probably one of the safest things people could do while they were out traveling. And that closeness to home probably gave residents a little bit of level of comfort that they know if the situation changes, they don't have far to go home. Um, so many trips, most of the trips that occurred last summer were for one of two purposes, um, either vacation and also visiting family and friends was a very frequent trip purpose for residents. We know residents made an average of two trips and stayed an average of 4 nights per trip, which is a very good news because everyone uh, gets to travel a little more and a little longer. So, and there's lots of opportunities to fill those nights that people are on the road. And of course, from a activity and experience perspective, it is no surprise that outdoor and nature experiences ranked very high on residents' to-do lists, while local restaurants were also a top place for residents to visit. So, and if we can keep the COVID levels low, if things go as planned over the next several months, and the vaccinations are progressing well, um, those who traveled last year will not take a lot of convincing to do it again this year, and we'll see why in a moment. Um, and their experience were just so good that almost everyone who traveled last year would do it again this year. However, there's a fairly uh, large share of residents who did not travel due to the pandemic, and they will certainly need a little bit more convincing to go out and get on the road and see the province. And that's why it is so important to build traveler confidence in that respect. And by emphasizing that Newfoundland and Labrador is a safe place to travel, this will help build some more potential among residents. So now let's go into a little bit more detail about these 5 things. So usually from an overall tourism perspective, and when we talk about non-residents, we usually look at the province as one whole piece. Um, but sometimes where the circumstances allow or make it necessary, it does make sense sometimes to take a regional perspective. We do live in a place with dispersed communities and potentially long travel distances. So taking a look at what is right in front of our eyes can be very practical, especially given the fact that residents stayed relatively close to home last year when they were out traveling. And so with the pandemic conditions improving, hopefully, and staying that way, there's also an opportunity or a chance for residents perhaps to venture out a little bit further and take a different perspective on their travel and what they want to get out of it, and you know, want to get a little bit more than a change of scenery. So, and we know like our province is very is a beautiful one, beautiful scenery. Every um, every region has beautiful scenery, a lot of history, a lot of culture. It can offer adventures, wilderness, and authenticity. So we have that pretty much everywhere in the province. However, each region is slightly different in those respects. And so one region might have a little more of one thing, and another region might have a little bit more of another thing. So what you see here on the slide is sort of summarizes the relative regional strengths based on residents' perceptions. So I'm not making this up. This is research based. Our residents told us these are the strengths for each region. And but the stress here is relative. As I said, each region has a lot of things to offer, but each region is also viewed a little bit differently by our residents. So each region might have a little bit more appeal to some residents, while another region will have more appeal to another segment of residents. So this is also with having these small different or differences within the regions also provides an opportunity, you know, for operators to reach across regions and get together and see how they complement each other's strengths to get more people out the door and travel. Um, so, and we also see like one area where we can probably continue to work on improving is destination knowledge. I've got 2 examples here. Residents who rate their destination knowledge as excellent or very good for the St. John's region, and for Labrador, you can see there's a difference there. But this happens in all the across all provinces in Canada. So each province has the regions that where residents have great knowledge, and there's regions where people have a little less knowledge. But regardless, this is an opportunity where we can build up this knowledge, and where we can tell residents, where we can educate them where they can go and see certain things in the province, and so residents can make those informed decisions and take full advantage of some of the vacation opportunities that exist all across the province. So from non-resident travel, we know that trip purpose, trip length, as well as destinations go hand in hand. They're closely linked. So trip purpose usually drives the length of stay and the destination people choose. Um, and this is the same for our residents. So last year, residents went on an average of 2 overnight trips in the province, and they stayed 4 nights per trip. And depending on the destination where residents went, trip lengths actually varied. So, for instance, those who went to Labrador, they stayed an average of 12 nights, while trips to the eastern region lasted about 3 nights. So, and all the other regions are kind of in between. I think, if I remember correctly, for St. John's, anybody who visited St. John's on a trip stayed about close to 5 nights. So, this year we probably will see similar patterns. Residents will travel mostly for vacation and to visit relatives and friends. And they're also likely to take multiple trips. And those who do take multiple trips are likely to take those trips for different purposes. So we'll see people out there on vacation, and they will also go on a trip to visit family or friends, and or some people might go on more than one vacation trip. We saw that last year as well. And our current research also indicates that residents have a preference for shorter getaway trips, and but there's also good potential for longer vacation trips. And each type of trip provides opportunities to attract certain travelers with specific offers. So those multiple days away from home, as I mentioned, they will need to be filled with activities and experiences. So, and this might also, like the trip lengths and where people, the purposes where people want, why people want to travel, uh, might be an opportunity to improve destination knowledge. For instance, you can build some, as an operator or operators who partner, you can build sort of an itinerary for a short getaway trip to give people some opportunity or some choice where they want to go. And there's also an opportunity to motivate those longer trips. If people are not quite sure where they want to go, so putting these offers out there to residents um, will certainly provide some motivation for some of them and to build up that potential. And it's also like those, especially those getaway uh, trips, they provide an opportunity to build a value offer, a value package by getting together with other operators and put something together that would appeal to residents. So from an activity perspective, um, yeah, and I think a lot of people have noticed this. The pandemic has had quite a traumatic impact uh, when it comes to experiences and activities. We know that travelers prefer the outdoors over indoors, wide open spaces over crowded attractions, and that's all necessitated by the physical distancing measures and the requirement to limit our social interactions, which is a shame. So that's why we probably saw a lot of travel last year to the central region and the beaches that were extremely popular, and also hiking trails were very popular places that people visited. So, and I don't think it will change that much this season, even though we know vaccinations are progressing. But I think the health authorities have made it very clear that health and safety measures will be with us for a good while. And so what you see here on the slides in the table, on the slide in the table, on the left-hand side, there's last year's top 10. So those are those are the places and activities that residents who traveled overnight last year reported to us in the survey. So we see food and culinary experiences, hiking, walking, beaches right on top of the list. And then in the right-hand column, those are the top 10 sort of general vacation interests that our provincial residents reported. created by Destination Canada. And those are activities around which travelers would plan a trip, and you could call them trip motivators as well if you want. But you see, there's good alignment between what people did last year and what general interests are among residents. So hiking, walking, natural attractions, camping, historic sites, always a big draw. And so I put live shows and festivals here on the screen with question marks. Um, we don't know, as I said, we don't know what travel is going to look like in a few months, or what the coronavirus situation is going to look like in a few months, what specific health measures are going to be in place. Actually, I read an article this morning on the CBC that a lot of festival and event providers are actually preparing in the background for putting off events in case that we are allowed to do this. And this will certainly give a big boost to resident travel, because we know live shows and festivals are generally big travel generators among residents. So keep fingers crossed that some of this can actually happen this season. Um, so one of the most interesting things for me that came out of the surveys, and probably some of the most important learnings from our survey, was that residents who did go on overnight trips last year had great, enjoyable experiences. I remember before the season started last year, or we didn't even know if we were going to have a season. um, Many operators struggled with how to position their offers, or how to adjust their offers to switch away from sort of a non-resident target market to residents. And admittedly, we didn't have very much information about residents and their travel. The last survey we did was like 10 years old. So it was a bit of a struggle. But the results, so whatever operators decided to do, uh, I can tell you it worked. Survey says it really worked. So in the very difficult situation that we had to deal with, operators did a great job, according to our residents, with what was out there to do and see. So what we basically did in our survey, we asked residents about their most memorable experiences, and by far the family aspect of travel was a winner for most residents. But it was also interesting that residents said they found specific attractions or places very memorable. Like they told us how they enjoyed the historic sites in Buena Vista, how they enjoyed Boyd's Cove Provincial Historic Site, Salmonia Nature Park, the Siemens Museum in Grand Bank. They enjoyed exploring Fogo Island or climbing Crowsmoor Mountain. So when you read the actual comments in the survey, it really came through how much residents enjoyed what they did last summer. And I think this speaks volumes about what operators accomplished last year, given the very difficult circumstances that they had to deal with, and a lot of uncertainty. So, but here is the results. I can assure you that residents did enjoy um, what they experienced last year, and this certainly bodes very well for this year. First of all, because as you can see here, 92% of residents who took a trip last year would do it again because they had a great experience last year. And secondly, um, this season will probably be a little bit more manageable for many operators, because we know a lot more about the virus. We know the vaccinations are happening, and a lot of the uncertainty that we experienced last year is kind of removed. And the health and safety measures we have in place, as many of you can probably attest, we're kind of used to it now. I don't think I've never heard anyone complaining about wearing masks. It's something we have to do, and it's a small sacrifice we can make. So a lot of this will come to play this season, and it will be much more comfortable for everyone with that uncertainty removed that we were facing last year. So So now that we know a few things about last year's resident travelers, I want to quickly touch on some opportunity that come out of this and that will help us build on the momentum that we created last year. I just want to touch on these. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because John Angelopoulos and his team, they will follow up in the next session and talk a little bit more about this. Um, but one thing I'd like for you to remember, uh, we don't have a lot of time to talk about a lot of things, so I'm just touching on some opportunities here, the ones that are sort of the most obvious that jumped really right out of the survey, and they're most likely to have appeal to a greater number of potential travelers. That doesn't mean um, that other opportunities exist. So let's start off with talking about food. As I mentioned before, sort of local restaurants and culinary experiences were right on top of the list of what residents reported having done last year. Um, and also think uh, food and drink is one of those things, is an area where we collectively as a province have made great strides in developing unique experiences right across the province. And many of these experiences expand on the traditional sense of taste, so to say, and they go way beyond just sitting sitting at the table in a restaurant as well. So a lot of creativity out there in the province when it comes to food and drink. And again, the beauty with food and drink is that you can be so creative. It can be very versatile. We have so much different types of foods, and um, it's in some cases it's simple, in some cases a little bit more complex to create these special offers. And the other thing is, the other beauty about food and drink is it can be combined with many other activities, and it can be done in virtually any setting. So this is a great opportunity here again for some regional or even cross-regional partnerships and packages that can be created. Basically, um, the creativity here in this area knows no boundaries, and it's a great opportunity that presents itself. And again, it's probably like to call it low-hanging fruit, but I know it's not that simple. But everybody got to eat when they're on a trip, so just well make that necessity an experience and add value to this special vacation trip or to a family event or something like that. So next up, um, another interesting outcome, I'd say, from our of last year's season um, was that there were many first times, and that was a little bit of a surprise for me, even though I probably should have known better. But so many first times, as you can see here, 27% of residents who traveled last year uh, visited a destination for the first time. And that includes popular regions regions that are popular with our non-residents as well, like Bonavista, Vista, Rosemorne, Fogo Island, Twillingate, Kings Point. All these places came up in the survey as being visited for the first time. Um, so this is great news. People are curious, still trying to get to know their province. And the reason for this might be that we probably had a lot of, not a lot of, I don't know what the share is, but there were likely some residents who usually travel outside the province and never consider the province as a place to visit for their vacation. But it was certainly an eye opener for some of those travelers. So, and even we were talking about residents having a tendency to stay close to home when they traveled last year, and um, probably stay with the devil you know. That might make them feel a little bit comfortable for traveling, but as you can see here too, there's certainly some potential here of getting residents out to stimulate and motivate them to go to a new destination, something that they haven't seen before. So, great opportunity to for residents to discover something new in their own province. And again, it goes hand in hand with what we talked about earlier, that there was a little bit of a lack of destination knowledge among residents. So again, this is another area here where we can build up this destination knowledge. There's an opportunity to make suggestions to residents, make them aware of something that they haven't heard about, that they're not aware uh, yet, and let them know what there is to discover in the different regions of the province. And this would work very well in combination with appealing to residents' interest in nature uh, and history. So again, as we're likely to still be traveling under pandemic conditions. Uh, so and our research tells us that under those conditions, travelers are not cramming everything into one day, but they pick one or two things that they want to do and feel comfortable with. So, and if it is this exciting offer of a little bit of an adventure, something new that they haven't seen before, would be a great opportunity for people to enjoy that as that one thing that they pick to do for a day. So last but not least, what very important, we mentioned that as part of the most memorable experiences, last year's travelers mentioned being able to spend time with friends and family. And this means a lot when Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are traveling. It is a very important aspect of resident travel. And in many cases, being able to spend time with family determines what destinations they choose, how long the trip is, and what they do during their trips. Uh, and so, as we have seen earlier, we can expect again this year that residents will travel a lot for family purposes. So being able to enjoy a destination or attraction as a family or with friends will certainly help boost travel among residents, and even perhaps result in some longer trips and or more destinations depending on what they're able to do. And also it's quite possible that we're going to live with family bubbles for a while. Um, so people will consider what they're going to be able to do within their family bubble, activities or experiences they're able to see. So anything that can be done in a small group um, or with the family will likely be very much appreciated by our resident travelers. So now that we know uh, those things, there's a couple of things I would like to talk about that are called the baseline. And why is it the baseline? I think these are just a couple of things that we really need to address to make um, traveling a success this summer. And one of those things is building traveler confidence. So this is not something I've made up or anything or really want to talk about. This is again survey after survey that reports on pent up demand also reports that um, building traveler confidence is a very important thing to do to get people traveling. Um, it is very important not just for our own residents, but should we have the opportunity to welcome non-residents, it will mean the same thing for them. And we all know, like from a traveler confidence perspective, uh, confidence has been severely shattered, and I do believe shattered is probably the right word to use when we look at survey data in terms of what means of transportation uh, travelers or potential travelers want to use, whether they want to get on a plane, visit a restaurant, go into a crowded venue or indoor venue for a festival. Numbers are very low, so it's very important to build up that confidence, and telling people it is safe to travel is the most important aspect. So we do have that pent up demand, but given the restrictions that we're facing, it doesn't necessarily mean that once the restrictions are lifted, that people stream out in droves and go on a trip. We still don't know what the COVID situation is going to be like in a month or 2 or 3 months. But we do know that any travel decisions will be impacted by the COVID case numbers, by the state of vaccinations, people's own risk tolerance, and who else is traveling, and where those travelers are coming from. One of the things well, I've heard last year, for instance, why this is playing a role when so a lot of residents had trips planned for the province, and then the bubble opened up, the Atlantic bubble, and we heard kind of two reactions from residents. Some people said, "Ooh, the bubble is open. I'm going to Halifax, or I'm going to PEI and play some golf. So I'm not going to travel here in the province." And on the other hand, we had the opposite reaction, saying, "Ooh, there's people coming from outside the province. I don't feel safe anymore. I will not be traveling in the province." So it's very important to have this in the back of our minds that traveler safety um, is impacted by a number of factors. So the numbers on the slide here, they speak for themselves. Um, Again, this comes out in many surveys that we have looked at, and it really does show how important health and safety considerations are for residents when it comes to travel. And it's not just the health and safety considerations as such, they go hand in hand with some of the refund and rebooking policies, because in case something does go wrong, that somebody's health situation or the pandemic situation changes, people need to have that peace of mind that they're not bearing the financial risk on their own. Um, so, what exactly does that mean? What can we do to build this traveler confidence? Um, so, the most important aspect here, and again, we're seeing this in all the travel related surveys, is uh, that these safety concerns can be addressed with a demonstrated commitment to health, hygiene, and safety. And the stress here is really on the word demonstrated. It's got to be visible, it's got to be um, front and center for the traveler to be able to see that there's a true commitment to have these health and safety measures in place, and that they're also enforced. So that, again, survey after survey tells us that these are some of the most important things operators can do or travel providers can do to build back that confidence. So one unfortunate thing that comes with these health and safety measures is that face-to-face interactions will need to be limited, and which is a so that increases the role of technology. But it's sort of, to me, this interaction, the loss of interaction is really a, um, a shame, because as we know, interacting with other people in a hotel, restaurant, on the road, kitchen party, all this really adds value to a trip, and it's a key ingredient to defining travel experiences, especially here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So this is like a really unfortunate victim of the pandemic. But again, there's things that probably can be done safely to have these interactions, and again, role of technology cannot be overlooked in all this. And as I mentioned, uh, those flexible and easy cancellation, rebooking, and refund policies, they go hand in hand with health, hygiene, and safety. So people have the peace of their mind that they're not getting stuck with a high price. I know Air Canada is still sitting on $1,200 that they got from me over a year ago. So um, ensuring that travelers or residents can be confident that if something does happen, they're not bearing the financial risk on their own will certainly help building some travel potential here. And I know, like last year, Many operators have a year under their belt now, and um, adjusting those policies was a big thing last year, and many operators already have that experience now, and they know what worked and what didn't work, and also have the knowledge of how important these things are. So we're certainly not starting from scratch here when it comes to these things. So we're well on our way to have that figured out. Um, so the other thing I would like to talk about when it comes to the baseline is delivering value for money. And for those of you who know me, you know this is one of those things that I keep talking about, and I've been doing this for a while. And but I also know we have made great progress over the past 10 years or so in that respect. Um, so why not? I just keep continuing to talk about it. But there's a good reason for this, and it is very important when delivering travel services or travel experiences. Value, or what the traveler perceives as value, is very important, and it can make or break a trip for many. And the pandemic has only elevated this issue because of the economic impact the pandemic has had on many of our residents and across the globe, really. And I remember last year, before we opened the season, I had a couple of conversations with some operators, and they were struggling with pricing of their offers, and just to see, okay, we've got residents traveling, what do I charge? What do I do? So there was a little bit of uncertainty, and we even heard some rumors or some instances about residents haggling for prices. So this seems a little bit unusual that people would do that, but this is what the numbers you see on the slide here. This is probably the reason why some of this happened. So, and this really shows you, takes a little look into the mindset of where some people might be coming from an economic perspective, because as we know, we do have that pent up travel demand, and financial affordability will play a big role whether people will actually go on the road or not. Um, so while it's not necessarily the majority that has felt a huge impact, a huge financial impact from the pandemic. Certainly not here in our province, but people are still very cautious with spending the money. If you look at that number here, 54% of Newfoundland Labrador residents delayed big purchases due to the pandemic, and that includes vacation. So everybody's uh, uh, holding back a little until they find out what is going on, and until we get to that revenge spending, maybe. But there's also, like, the pandemic has created this new sense of frugality, and it's much worse than what we've seen during the recession in 2008 and 9. People were holding back then too and didn't really know what was going to happen, and this has been exacerbated um, by the pandemic. So it's, I just want to show these numbers just uh, to show that there is a need to understand the traveler's mindset, where they're coming from, and why they may be looking for a good deal or price, and why they might be haggling over that $10 or $20 for a room. Um, and budget travel, but we've always seen budget travel, people traveling on small budgets, medium budgets, and this will be with us over the next little while for sure. So this is one side of the coin. Um, and then here's the other. So price versus value. Um, we know that the two are not the same, and Warren Buffett, to me, he put it very eloquently: price is what you pay, and value is what you get. So, and of course, value is in the eye of the beholder, or the traveler in our case. So, value to the traveler is what they perceive it is, and it doesn't always line up with what our own values are. And to make things a little bit more complicated now during the pandemic, we know a lot of customer values and what consumers perceive as value has changed dramatically. If you think about the experiences people have had over the past year with the pandemic, lots of people getting sick, family members passing away from the disease, being locked down, not being able to go places. It's a dramatic impact on everybody's life. So our perception of value has changed dramatically as well, and it features into travel, right? So what the meaning of travel is for some people has changed, and their expectations that come when the expectations that they have when they're traveling have suddenly changed, and what they want to get out of the trip. And so this is all changes how they choose travel providers, where they go, what they want to do. So a huge impact. And it's probably gotten a little bit more difficult to figure out what our customers' values are, or travelers' values are. And but one thing that has remained unchanged is really to be able to deliver value, we do have to know who our customer is. We have to have some deep knowledge about them and what their needs are and what their expectations are. But luckily, and I think our operators here have had much success with some of the things that can be done to deliver value. Um, and some of the things are just making small adjustments in our processes, how we operate. Things like personalizing or customizing offers, staying engaged with customers, empowering staff. They're very powerful means, and perhaps relatively simple, um, to create that value that travelers are expecting. It's again, it can be a very creative process, and it's only bound by the boundaries of our imagination. So there's a lot of things we can do, and you know, thinking about the specific value that you want to pass along to your customers. Um, this is where you can figure out, what might resonate with residents, and it might work with non-residents as well. So it might not be that much different. So that is that. So, um, just a quick note. I think we have some time. I won't spend a lot of time on this. You'll have that in your package when you receive it. Um, if the Atlantic bubble does open, so far things are looking good. April 19th was the date that is out there. So maritime, the Maritimes, hopefully they'll come. Um, and if they do come, actually, most of the work has already been done. If we're addressing resident travelers' needs, they line up really well with what Maritimers are looking for from a trip. So the potential looks really good. As I mentioned, residents of other provinces are more inclined to actually travel outside their own province rather than in province. So there's good potential here for Maritimers to come to the province, and actually a lot of Maritimers are considering, are already considering Newfoundland and Labrador as a travel destination. In terms of experiences and activities, lines up really well with what Newfoundlanders and Labradorians want to get out of trips. Hiking, walking, local food, natural attractions, and historic sites are uh, on top of their list here. Same thing with promoting Newfoundland Labrador as a safe destination will probably help stimulate some travel here. And our family ties with the Maritimes will likely stimulate additional demand to come here. So that is it for me, and just want to leave you with one optimistic thought. We always need a holiday. That's not going to go away, and we will get back to where we were. Just need tourism is very resilient, so we'll get there. And everybody needs a holiday. We know that. And last but not least, um, If you do have some questions about our research, about the presentation today, any other additional information, here's our contact information, our website. We do have a specific report out on our website, uh, our resident travel survey that analyzes last year's travel. You can have a look at that. There's more detail in there. And I'd also encourage you and to have a quick look at our consumer research that we put together. It's a summary of pretty much everything that we could learn about the consumers, their mindset, and how it relates to travel. So very interesting report there. It's called Travel and Tourism During COVID-19 Consumer Research. I'd encourage you to have a look at that. And there's other reports out there. And we will also post the slides here from today's presentation on our website. You'll find it there.
Perfect.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Excellent job. Very informative and valuable data once again. It's definitely important stuff to help us formulate our go forward strategy. So thanks so much for that. Johnny Devereaux, who's coming on, many of you guys have known he's on the board of H&L right now, but he's also president of the Edge of Avalon Inn, which is an award-winning inn, and it's up in Trepassey on the Irish Loop. So Johnny, you're on, buddy.
Okay. Thank you, Stan, and the H&L team there for having me on today. I never thought I'd be the most tech-savvy person on the group that I could actually get on and present right away. Chanel and Alex will attest for that. Now, just looking in the chat room there, I see one of my friends and works with us also, Virginia. She'll attest to that too. So hi, Virginia. Anyway, it's definitely an interesting year, to say the least. I'm just going to give you a quick story of what we went through last year, what we're looking at doing again this year. I'm John Devereaux, owner of Edge of the Avalon Inn, located on the beautiful Irish Loop in Trepassey, right next to our newest provincial World UNESCO Heritage Site, Mistaken Point, which has some of the oldest fossils in the world, 565 million years old. So that's a big part of the reason that we're pretty busy there. We have our main inn has 15 rooms and 3 suites, and then we have an annex building that has another 10 rooms, and then we have 3 chalets also that we operate. So in the summertime, it's really busy. Last year, we were just discussing actually in our pre-meeting here with Stan and the team, how much fun we had at the H&L conference last year in Corner Brook. And I remember distinctly, we were leaving Corner Brook, everyone was hugging and kissing and you know, having all pumped up for a great year. And 2 weeks later, that was in, I think, the 1st of March, 2 weeks later, we were pretty much shut down. So then we had to go into survivor mode and try and figure out. We didn't realize how hard this was going to hit. So the first thing we had to think about was, where are we going with this, and how are we going to survive, basically. So we basically had meetings with our staff and team at Edge of the Avalon Inn twice a week sometimes. And first of all, we wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable. In rural Newfoundland, a lot of the accommodators and tourism operators have older staff, and they don't feel comfortable when the virus came out and everything, which I can attest to. So our first and foremost mandate was to make sure that our staff feel comfortable and that they feel that they're okay with, I was turning off the phone, they feel comfortable with what we're trying to do, and we let them take the lead, basically. So once we got that in place, we put protocols in place with cleaning, PPE, all our shields and face masks and everything like that. And then cleaning the rooms. Some of the staff didn't feel comfortable going into rooms. So we bought a vaporizing machine, as you can see here. And we'd spray the rooms, and we'd leave a room for a full day before we go in. And then the staff would actually put a sticker on the door just so that the guests felt comfortable when they came, in that when they went, they realized that there was no one else in the room for the last 24 hours. So that was a big thing. And we basically had to bob and weave and pivot. And I know everyone hates that word, but it's still there. As the summer progressed, we realized in June that people didn't really feel comfortable staying at the inn. So then we said, you know what, let's focus our business model or remodel our business to trying to focus more on people's bubbles and people that felt comfortable traveling in small groups to our chalets. So we had the 3 chalets there. And we just advertised that. We changed our website and did a lot of work with that. And, you know, we did really good with the chalets all summer, but the inn was really slow. We have a 70-seat restaurant there that we didn't open at all last year. We just had takeout and everything. Luckily enough, last summer was pretty good, so a lot of people could eat on our patio deck. This year, what we're planning on doing, we're going to be meeting again now in the coming weeks and putting a plan in place. Again, we make plans every day, the same as all you tourists and operators do, and it could change the next day. So what we're going to do, we're going to open our restaurant this year and hopefully advertise the inn and just make sure our guests feel comfortable and our staff feel comfortable and safe. And on a positive note, we've got a lot of research from the government and from H&L. I mean, H&L in the past year has done more work, I think, than anyone else in Newfoundland. Just putting out webinars, giving research. I think every second day we could be on a webinar with some research and everything, and just giving us updates and status and where things are going. So kudos to you guys. And we're going to continue to do that. So this year we're just going to try and open our restaurant. I feel comfortable that people will want to travel to Newfoundland if we can ever get the bubbles open, because we're a wide open space. I saw Jared Clark was on there with the birding. Like, people want to get outside, observe the landscapes. You have freedom, fresh air, and everything like that. Whereas in Toronto, you can't do that, and you feel cooped up, and you don't feel safe. In Newfoundland, I think that's one of our biggest resources. And once this is over with, I think Newfoundland is going to boom again. Newfoundland, Labrador. So on that note, you know, I feel positive about the future. We just got to get to that step, and the federal and provincial governments really got to take care and help us out until we get there. The wage subsidies is huge. We got to try and keep that going. Any liquidity that the government can give and help out, because we're in it for the long haul, and tourism is a booming business in Newfoundland. I mean, it's as big as the fishery. So we just got to get there, and hopefully it'll pick up and go stronger in the future.
Perfect. I think you're right.
Yeah.
So
other than that, Stan, I think
no,
that's just my story, and just wanted to give you.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's a bit hopeful there too, and we're all kind of in the same boat.
Yeah.
So thanks, John. Joe, I see Joe there on my list. So Joe, are you ready to go?
I'm trying.
All right, buddy.
Yeah.
The floor is yours when you want it.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Joe from O'Brien, and we dealt with pandemic as much as humanly possible. We had to sell our soul to the so-called friendly competitors, as we thought at the beginning of our industry when we first started. Now we've joined forces. Ourselves and the Gatheralls operation merged in 2020 to survive. Everything is about surviving in a pandemic, because we've never had to deal with such an event before in history of man. We're all planning on retiring eventually and making plans on where we're going to go and what we're going to do. But the pandemic forced us to change our course, shall we say. So, you know, we just offer bird and whale watching sort of an event, and food and beverage and shuttle services and craft stores, all these sorts of events. But what were you going to do when less than 8% of your business is local business, and how are you going to survive? So we had to sit with our operators, our co-operators, and figure out a plan. And it was very difficult at first, because giving up your who you are to become partners with someone who you thought was a competitor had to be a little mind game at first, but once we got our head around it and we figured out the logistics of how to make it work for both companies, we put the plan in motion and offered it to our clients. And it was received with great enthusiasm, sort of skepticism at first. Nobody together all would be so cozy together, shall we say. But we became very good allies in the industry. We offered our vessel on a week-by-week basis for both companies to utilize their staff so that people could qualify for employment insurance and feel confident that the companies they work for had their best interests in mind and given them secure employment. These were all big concerns for our staff, making sure that the customer had a good experience and had a positive experience and had a safe experience. These were things we had to really work on very hard. We had to make sure that customer confidence was built. In building customer confidence, we had to first get over the hurdle of our regulating body, Transport Canada, to allow us to operate, and to operate at a very limited capacity was something we had to grapple with. And at first we thought we'd get more than what we did, but we were allowed half our capacity. So we utilized our Atlantic Puffin because she had double decks. She had a very large cabin arrangement area and lots of open space for people to observe their family groups in a bubble atmosphere. So we made sure that our guests felt confident about our service, and we talked about COVID quite a bit. We actually start off our tour giving COVID instructions on PPE protection, sanitizing the vessel, making sure that people felt confident and we wanted to actually enjoy our experience. So by doing that, we showed people we're sanitizing between trips. We made sure that they were quite aware of what was going on, and if they had any questions, concerns, or comments, or anything of that regard, that they could, no problem, ask us to do what we could to alleviate their concerns. In reservations, we produced another little adding service or booking reservation service that showed our contractual obligations to our guests, that they were very easy to reschedule, very easy to cancel, and we weren't going to place any penalties on it. In the past, we had a 24-hour cancellation policy, which we changed to the local environment because locals are not going to go on a boat tour in the pouring rain, wind. So we reduced our cancellation policy to 1 hour as opposed to 24 hours, and we put lots of emphasis on rescheduling and no problem, whatever it took to make you feel comfortable and get value for your money. We were then judged by our guests on what we offered, in the fact that we made sure that people felt safe and that they had a good experience. So TripAdvisor is where we get our best ratings. So people talk about our service on TripAdvisor, and that gives us a positive feedback. We put that to all our crew and all our company, and everybody feels very positive when they get mentioned on TripAdvisor in a positive way. If it is a negative way, we take that into consideration and work on that as well to make a better experience for our guests. So education, information, all that's crucial. It's even more crucial to the Newfoundlanders and Labradorians because they want to make sure that if they're taking a boat ride to go see puffins and whales, well, it better be as good as it can possibly be as if they were in a
I think I just lost Joe's audio, guys. Have we lost Joe? I think he's on mute.
Am I live again now?
You're live with us again, boy. Go on, keep shooting.
Excellent. It's hard times. So there's songs about all of that, and that's what we do. You know, we make the best of a tough situation.
Can you give us a song, Joe?
I'll give you a little song at the end of it. So, we all work together. The key of the message is very simple. The harder we work together, the more powerful we are in the global market to sell ourselves. And that's who we are competing against. That's the competitors for Newfoundland and Labrador, because I'm not looking at 2021. I'm looking at 22, 23, 24, and on down the road, because we're not going to make it on one single season. We're not going to retire on one single trip. So we have to make long-term plans and commitments to our industry and to our partners. Our partners are everybody in Newfoundland and Labrador. The food and beverage is a big partner with us. The transportation service is a big partner with us. The accommodation is a big partner with us. So when everybody realizes that we're all in the same boat, pulling on the oar together or hauling on the rope, it makes us more confident as an industry to prepare ourselves for the world market. This is what makes us stronger, by being more collaborative together, and being a part of things like hospitality has taught us for a long, long time. The more we work together, the more powerful we are in the marketplace. And that's where we want to be, is being a contender in the marketplace, because we are competing against every other attraction on the globe. And we want people to recognize Newfoundland and Labrador as a great place to come and visit, with wonderful people, hospitality. That's what makes us. And it's summed up in a song for us. It's hard times. It goes, we get up in the morning, go out in the ocean, turn on stand, and make a commotion. That sort of a thing. So you just gotta put a spin on it, and it's got to be a positive spin. So, we've been here a long time. I'll do the best I can to help and answer questions from anybody anywhere in this industry. I don't like giving information out to other countries, but here in Canada, we work as a team and we sell ourselves together. So, I'm going to be here for a while. I'll even put dye in my hair if I got to. I'll turn it green.
Joe. So,
Thank you,
excellent.
Sam.
Thanks, Joe. So stick around for seconds. We're going to have a few questions. So it'd be great now if everyone, when you come back on, I believe we're going to try to do it before we get to the Q&A portion, is everyone stick on their video screen and we could have a good look at everyone's face. Everyone can smile and wave, because I know H&L and others want to take a picture of everyone that's on the screens. So take yourself you can keep yourself on mute, but just take yourself off the view so we can see your beautiful faces. Geez, there's lots of people that are afraid to show themselves. Come on, we'll give you a couple more seconds. While we're waiting for that, I've got a question for Joe, and it kind of gets along the lines of what you mentioned there, Joe. I know it's tough times, but one of the things that I think you really impressed a lot of us with is how you went with your competitor, that's seen as your competitor, and you know their strengths and weaknesses as they know yours. So what values you bring, the synergy of you two guys coming together? You look at the market and you said, this is where we got to be. Just give some people some sense of that. No, you're on mute, Joe. That's the word of 2020. You're on mute.
Okay, am I off mute now?
Yeah, you're good, buddy.
Yeah, well, this is hard to listen to a neighbor and a friend of yours for your whole lifetime to tell you what you're not good at. But it was also very enlightening to find out what he thought was good about your company, and it was vice versa for both companies. So we took our weaknesses and collaborated them, and took our strengths and piled them up.
Post office.
Oh, I can hear someone there. Someone's telling with the post office.
So,
okay, go ahead, Joe.
So our key is to work on your strengths and close off your weaknesses. We always said TripAdvisor was a double-edged sword. So anything that was negative about what we done, we changed as quickly as we could, as soon as we saw it. And we brought all that to the table when we negotiated with the Gatheralls to make sure people had great experience. And as a result, TripAdvisor said we were a #1 boat tour for all of Canada for an attraction. So, that gives us a good feeling. You've got to learn to change and accept change. Change is the most difficult thing in this industry to do. You always think, you got to remember, you're looking through the eyes of your customer and right, through their Visa card.
Well said. I'm going to throw something to Johnny around the same lines, John. Not talking about your competitors, but your customer. So you sounded like you looked at what your customer was saying to you last year, and you did the famous pivot and twisted and pivoted, and you helped that define your strategy for last year, is it your sense it's going to be the same thing for this year as well? Or you think that 2021 you'll be focusing more heavily on your accommodations that are standalone, or what are you thinking?
I'm trying to get my video on here. You can hear me, Stan.
I can hear you. You're good. Yeah, it's
Okay,
probably the best. It's probably your best look, John.
I 100% agree, especially in the mornings. But no, my belief is that hopefully with a great meeting from Dr. Fitzgerald today, we could move maybe to alert 2. I don't know, level 2. That's very hopeful. She's doing a great job, and she's pretty regimented the way she's handling things. So good on her for that. I can see May, June being very similar to last year, with people traveling and everything like that, and people not feeling comfortable in traveling. Depending what happens in Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, these places, hopefully by July, August, things could really pick up and hopefully open the bubble and come back to somewhat even 50 to 60% of 2019. I never thought that'd be an accomplishment, but we'll see where it goes. But I can see July, August, the way it's trending right now, that we could get back to some sense of normalcy. We'll see.
Okay. I'm going to throw it over to Miss Kathy Lohman. Kathy has her hand raised, and Kathy is, as I have my video screen on now, I realize I look a little bit like Bob Cole used to look when he was doing the games on Saturday night. So it's not a great look for me. John, you look better than I do, I think. So go ahead, Ms.
Patty
Lohman.
Daly could be in for a round too, but look at
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead, Kathy.
I had a question for Michaela, I guess, because I was shocked to see that attractions weren't part of the top 10 things that travelers went to see. And I'm just thinking the Rose Blanche Lighthouse and those types of attractions. Because, as we're planning our packages, these are the things that a lot of us use as an add-on to, accommodations plus entrances to some of those museums and attractions. Was there, I know a lot of them were not open, and maybe that's why they didn't make the grid, or maybe they're added into historic sites. Is Michaela still there?
Yeah, she's listening.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just trying to, you said attractions were not on the top 10 list?
No, there's historic sites on the list.
Yes.
But I didn't know where museums and things like lighthouses are, that we call attractions, I guess, because they're not historic sites. If they made the grid somewhere.
Yeah, no, what we had in our survey last year, we had a certain number of attractions listed that people could check off, and I'm not sure, we may not have had lighthouses on it. I have to look it up in the actual report, but these are like from the percentage or the share of travelers who visited those places. No, the top 10 are listed here, but this being said, anything outdoors, they shouldn't, not seeing it on the list here shouldn't discourage you from including it into a package. But because anything, a lighthouse, it could be lighthouses in particular, and anything that's outdoor is high in demand. People are very open, very inclined to see outdoor spaces rather than going somewhere indoors. Museums, you mentioned museums were on the list, and they did rank fairly low. I believe it was like 10% of last year's travelers visited a museum. And from research we did before the season, like back in April, May last year, we also knew that there was very big high level of hesitancy to visit indoor spaces. Now, again, I think, so we will do a travel intention survey within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll try to figure out what, it will include some information on where people might want to go and what attractions they might want to see. So we're hoping, and again, like I'm going back to the high level of uncertainty we had to deal with last year. People were very hesitant to go inside, be around other people. We didn't know how the health measures were working, like the masks were not made mandatory until late August. So the level of comfort this year, I would expect it to be much higher for people to go inside and do something indoors, because of the experience we've had now with the virus. So by no means, don't be discouraged by not seeing something on the list. It's like how you package it up, and how lighthouses, I think, are always generally popular, and the lighthouses we do have, well, obviously they're outdoor spaces, so they're very attractive from a visitor perspective. So again, it's all, I guess, on how you partner, how you position it. It could be a hidden gem in your area. I've been to the Rose Blanche Lighthouse, and it's a beautiful, beautiful spot. So I don't see any reason why this should not be included in a package offer, or why it should be even a standalone attraction to be recommended or promoted to residents.
Do you have a follow-up, Kathy?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's good. Thanks, Michaela. But the biggest issue, I mean, I just spoke to them this week as well as the train site, and most of them don't even know if they'll be open this summer because they're run by a volunteer organization. They depend on summer students. And so, this time of year when our minds are working on what are we going to promote as a package, it's difficult to add them in because they're not sure if they're going to be opened.
Yeah, that is a challenge. And again, like I did forget to mention this, like when we see some low uptake of some activities, we did see that if you go into the actual report on our website and look at the activities in some of the places, the low uptake is a combination sort of what was open and what people felt comfortable with. We do know there was a few places not available. So when you see some low numbers, it's probably a combination of the effects of the level of comfort of people doing it, and whether the activity or a place or certain attraction was actually available where people went to for their vacation or for their trips.
Okay, thanks.
So hopefully this will change and we'll have a little bit more a few more attractions open this year. But again, there's a lot of impact, a lot of influences on how whether these things can open, as you said, challenges with staff and things like that. So.
Thanks, Michaela. Before I go to Mr. Fleming, I'm going to go back to you, Michaela. And Jennifer Lake has posed a question that's a bit of an operational analytical question for our research guru. And Jennifer has asked, how is the data presented, collected from the 2020 travelers, and how many inputs are the percentage based on? So that's for you, Michaela. So I guess she wants to know how is the data you presented collected, and then how many inputs are the percentages based on? I guess how many
sample sizes, I guess. Is that what that refers to?
No, so, the data. I don't know. I don't know if Jennifer's actually, can I see here on my screen? But it seems she basically wants to know, how'd you collect the data? Everything you talked about, how'd you get it, and how many folks were? What was your number? What was your?
Oh, okay, I think I understand. If not, what was the name?
Jennifer
name?
Lake.
Jennifer. By all means, send me an email afterwards if I'm not going in the right direction. But what we did with the survey. We did an online survey with one of the research firms here, and they used their online panel, and they used the sample of, I believe, I think it was 400 or 500 residents, and we did ask residents whether they did an overnight pleasure trip between June and October in 2020, and based on the response. Respondents were asked the questions about last year's summer, and I think we ended up with a sample size of 214 respondents. But they are representative of the way the survey is set up. It's a representative sample of the adult population of the province.
Okay, thanks, Michaela. Mr. Fleming, you had a question for some of our esteemed panelists.
Yes, absolutely. Pleasure to be here this morning. I had a question for Mr. Devereaux. Of course, I'm operating a hotel here in the downtown St. John's, and just curious, down your way, John, you had indicated you pivoted and you had to adapt, and I guess we all had to find a way to figure out how best to operate, and at the same time stay safe, and of course I'm sure our staff were comfortable, as you had mentioned. Just curious with your business levels or your patterns of business, I guess, what can you, and you might have mentioned it, but sorry if you did, I missed it, but what would, like, was length of stay longer? Was there more like day of bookings? Like what stood out to you as being more notable than previous years?
Hi, Greg. Thanks for the question. Good to see you again. Anyway, the big thing I noticed is that people were traveling in larger groups with families, bubbles, and stuff like that. They didn't feel comfortable staying in hotel rooms, as you're well aware. But I felt like the chalets that we have to offer there, we had 8 to 10 people in a family or a group, and they were staying a little bit longer. Our usually nights, our stay is 1 to 2 nights. Groups were staying probably 3 to 4 nights and just exploring the outdoors and doing some hiking and visiting the lighthouses and the Mistaken Point and everything. So it was a big difference from what I noticed in 2018, 2019. We had groups traveling, staying at the inn that stay for probably 1 night and then they're on the way again. But groups now are actually coming for 3 to 4 days. So that's a big difference that I noticed this year.
Interesting. And did you have pushback or, people not happy that the restaurant wasn't open, or did you do a breakfast?
Yeah. But you know what? My motto this year, it's a year to experiment and not have to apologize. And you know what? Our staff didn't feel comfortable with the restaurant being open, and I wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable. This year we're gonna revisit that, and we're gonna try to open it up. We have a 70-seat restaurant. It's a beautiful place, so we're gonna look at it, doing it obviously if we can, in smaller numbers or whatever. But yeah, no, it's just about what our team felt comfortable with, basically. But we did have some pushback too, especially people driving the Irish Loop, and then one of the big things was nowhere to use washrooms. So we basically had, and I think Virginia, one of my team members, is on here. We basically had someone at our washroom just stopping and cleaning every time someone came to visit there, because there was nowhere to use washrooms on the Irish Loop. So we had a lot of people come like that. So it's just weird things like that we had to accommodate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have you had much in the way of calls or interest in advanced bookings at this point, or what
we have a lot of bookings coming from the US, coming from Ontario. Last year, this time, I think we had 700 cancellations. For a small inn in rural Newfoundland, that's a lot.
Wow. Yeah.
This year, I mean, there's a lot of bookings. We'll see where it goes. There may be all cancellations again in May or June, but fingers crossed that we're getting there.
Good stuff. Thanks.
All right, buddy.
All right, guys, we're almost at the end there. So a big thank you to our panelists, and a really big thank you to all the folks that registered. The reality of it is, through your outreach to us, through the filling out the surveys and talking on the telephone to our team at H&L and letting us know what your issues are, these topics are directly related to what your challenges are. So we have another show going on in a half an hour, which is based on product development, and another one this afternoon, which is based on social media, the same ones we did Wednesday. So thank you for everyone for joining. Very, very valuable for us to hear from you. So keep reaching out to H&L, keep reaching out and letting us know what your issues are. And when you hear from one of our team members, please give them as much time as you possibly can. And thanks so much, folks, for everyone, and really good luck for the summer, the main tourism season we have. Hopefully things go well. So cheers, all the best.